Today we're going to be working on this liquid manure spreader here. I'm going to show you guys my process for dealing with old rusted out farm equipment, how I figure out what material I need to buy for this job, and I'm also going to give you guys some tips on how you can make similar repairs like this. Let's get into it. The customer brought this to me because it was leaking manure in a few different spots. So today we're going to patch those areas and make sure that the manure won't leak out anymore. The first spot that's leaking is on the back right here. You can see that started to rust out there. That's where the manure was leaking from. So we're going to put a patch over that. You see I kind of drew a line about where the patch is going to be. You want to go a little bit higher than where the rust is so that you know you're welding to something good. When it comes to welding along the bottom, I'm going to try and weld along that lip there because that doesn't look super rusted. So that's pretty much the gist of what we're dealing with here. Now, the trickier one to get to is going to be up underneath the tank here. The part that's rusted out is in between the bottom of the tank and the top of this metal box here. This is the shaft for the PTO, which drives it. So that's going to be tough to work around. Now, ordinarily, I wouldn't be able to get up inside of here to make that patch. But the customer told me that this box right here is now obsolete and I can actually just cut the whole thing off. So that's what we're going to start. We're going to start by cutting this box down so that I can get up there and actually make the patch. Now I could just come up in here guns blazing and cut off the section that I need cut off, but I don't know what exactly is in there. So I'm going to start by taking this cover plate off and actually see what the heck's going on inside there, because there might be some things in there I don't want to damage. You just never know. If you guys know what this is and what this does, let me know down in the comments below, because this PTO shaft here, this is what actually drives it to spin out, but I'm not sure what this was meant to do. Maybe push all the manure up to the front and then it can be spun out. The customer just told me that he doesn't need it and there's no other way for me to really get access to this. So this is what I have to do. Ho ho ho! Yep, that's the smell. It's hit me now. It's here. And it's here to stay. Once I get this plate off, I'll be able to see a lot more of where... Ooh, it's time to get glasses. Manure in my eye is just not something I want to have today. Wasn't on my list of things to do. I'm gonna have to get this guy up over on this side. A little bit like this. Okay, she's free now. Okay. Yeah, you know, there really ain't much in there. Well, that makes me feel a lot better about cutting into it. I wasn't sure what was behind this thing. I just wanted to make sure that whatever I cut through here, I didn't like blast something out. You just never know. I've never done one of these before, so when you don't know what's back behind there, it's better to be safe than sorry. Well, now I think it's time we can bust down the torch and cut this thing out. Oh, burnt manure. Ha! That's gnarly. I hate manure! Okay, let me show you guys the trouble that we're fighting here. It's really not that bad, but I just think it's kind of interesting. So on the bottom here went just fine. We cut right through that. But where they made that repair previously, I was only able to cut through the outer piece, and that's because when you're preheating it with the torch, it doesn't heat that inner piece up enough to bust that through. So I'm basically just going to have to do two cuts. I'm going to have to do one cut to get the outer layer out of the way, and then I'm going to have to do another one to get that inner cut out like that. It's just something interesting I thought I'd share with you guys. Well, I was getting ready to cut up on the inside here with the torch, but my pry bar is poking all the way through. This is all just rusted out. This is all just gone. I think this thing will just pop right off. Maybe I gotta cut over here a little bit more. Oh, there it goes. Whoa! Well, there she goes. Oh, I see where it was leaking from. That's not really what I was expecting. That'll actually be a little bit easier to fix, I think. I was expecting the damage to be up on the bottom of the tank somewhere here, but it's actually right there. That's where his leak was coming from. So we gotta find something to do there. This is a little bit better because now I don't actually have to match the curve that's underneath here, which is not a very extreme curve. I'd have been able to do that with the tools I have, but now I know I just pretty much just need to put a straight piece here. Now that I know that I'm not patching up underneath here, but instead this plane here, I can just measure up to the top of this, which is about 12 inches. To figure out what thickness I need, I'm just gonna pull that off of the old piece that I just cut off here. And that is not quite a quarter. That looks like 3/16 to me. But I think we can make a 10-inch piece work because we're gonna be doing outside corners on this. So 10-inch might actually be the perfect size we need. So we just need a piece of 3/16 by 10. That's 12 inches long. And whatever else we need on the front. Let's go calculate that now so we can get things rolling on that front. Now I think we're gonna go height-wise about 10 inches up from the bottom of that rust. That'll get us plenty out of the way and make sure that we're able to weld onto some good metal there. And as far as width goes, 10 inches high, I should make a mark here. That's a real rough mark, but 48 inches, so 48. So we're gonna need 5 feet of that. Let's go order that up.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to give myself a break from working on the bottom of this and work on the patch that goes on the side. I'm going to do this differently than most guys. Most guys would probably try and prop this up there and trace around it, but there's too many things underneath of it. I'm not going to be able to get a good line. I'm going to be mostly guessing for that. So that's not an option. Another thing a lot of guys do is they'll set up like a compass and they'll figure out the radius and they'll trace around that way. I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to try and figure this out by using coordinates. Honestly, I'm not going to bore you guys with the math of it. Basically, all I did was put a circle with the same radius of the tank on a graphing calculator. Then I translated the bottom 10 inches of that circle onto my piece of steel in 2-inch increments. Well guys, that doesn't look half bad. We got a monster gap here, but I can close that with my hand. I've just got that board in there to kind of hold it up against the side of the tank, and I've got it propped up on those random scrap pieces of tube that I have. And the other side looks pretty good. It looks even, it looks straight. So now I think I'm going to mark this where it's at and start prepping the material so I can tack this thing on. I'm going to show you guys one of my favorite tools. Now, this gap in here, I can't fit my angle grinder in here to clean that out. It just doesn't fit. But this thing right here, this is just a handheld belt sander. This is actually a real cheap, big, and bulky one, but they do make nicer ones. Milwaukee has a cordless one. And these are probably the most underrated tool. These things do not get enough love. I can get this thing all the way in there and prep that whole area out with just this little belt. The handiest little thing. Well, I think this is the final fit. We'll tuck this corner up like this. This is overhanging about the same as this side over here. I'm pretty happy with the fit. I think it's finally time we can start welding. Now, if you guys haven't done so already, now would be a great time to consider subscribing to the channel. I do all sorts of repair videos like this. I do some tool reviews. I do a little bit of everything welding related. The reason why I'm not running this all out in one pass is because this is a real flat plane of metal, and putting all that heat into one straight line like that can actually end up warping the surface of this. Anytime you put heat into metal, you're gonna have some warping, but my job here is to eliminate the amount of warping that goes into this. So that's why I'm not just running one great big long one all the way across. Now I do have a slight gap in here. It's not going to be perfect all the way across, but I think I'm going to be able to fill this in. I'm just trying to go slow enough to where I'm able to fill that gap in and get good enough penetration to both the new plate and the old tank. And I think I was able to do that. Well guys, we got the whole thing welded up here. Not too shabby. On the other side, I'll show you what that looks like. There it goes. I think we can consider the back of this tank done. Now all that's left to do is go back underneath of it and finish what's going on down there. Now the customer actually just came by and we talked a little bit more about what he wants to do underneath here. He also explained to me that cylinder that I pulled out, that was for a door that was on a hinge so that it would open up so that you could clean this box out. But he said he never liked cleaning it out that way because there were gaskets that would never seal and this thing would always leak. So he just wants that plated over, covered up, because we're gonna do something different on the inside of this box. Let me show you. This whole system is gravity fed. It's not pressurized in any way, shape, or form. The only pressure that this tank is under is from the weight of all of the liquid manure, which means that if we put a plate in here that was kind of at an angle, like that, sorta, that would kind of push everything down back that way. That would keep a lot of buildup from just piling up in here and causing actually the bottom of this box to rust out. I'm surprised that it hasn't leaked from there yet because I feel like that's where the most amount of moisture and manure would end up being. But if we put a plate in there at an angle, that'll funnel it all down into where it's supposed to be shot out. It'll also make it easier to clean and it'll last longer. Now I'm gonna scrape all the manure that's stuck inside of here out, and that'll be the first step in cleaning this thing up. The trouble that adding this plate inside adds is that I'm welding to the inside of this, which, as we know, they've already patched around the outside, so we know that steel is junk to begin with. So that's just gonna make life a little bit harder for us. Well, we got the inside of here cleaned out, not too bad. That was everything that was inside. First place to start back here is to figure out the width of this. And I am at a good 9.5 inches. So I gotta cut this 10-inch wide piece down to 9.5. That way it can slip in here. I got this plate trimmed down now, all ground out. And that should just slide. You know, that's pretty close. I think once I clean up the inside of this, it'll slide in a little bit better. In fact, let me just do that right now. Yep, I'm getting a mask. This is too much. I really should be having one of these on anyways, but it just gets in the way. Makes it hard to talk. Can't really understand what I'm saying now. You know, it's actually not that bad. Well, she slides in pretty good. What I'm trying to figure out is the optimal angle to have this plate at. Because ideally I'd like to be able to get inside here, weld this joint all the way inside there, because that'll keep manure from getting stuck in this little section here. But in order for me to do that, I'd have to have this on such a steep angle that I probably won't even be able to get on top to put a weld there. Unless I weld it from the inside on the bottom. I could do that. I could probably do that. I don't know though. Let me beat this around with a hammer and see if I can't decide what I'm gonna do. Well guys, I'm kind of thinking something like this, because I can get up inside all the way down to there, and I can do the same thing on this side. So there won't be any welds on from the top, but welding on the bottom will be just fine. And that way I can get in there and seal that edge up. But before I weld anything on here, I'm gonna round these corners on the edge, because this actually has a weld seam inside there. So if I curve those corners back here, that's gonna eliminate that gap all along the bottom. So that's really the only thing left to do before we have to weld this thing on. Well guys, I got it in there now. And that looks a heck of a lot better. You see the difference? Just a small gap in the corners. At the bottom it's touching. Sides fit good all the way down. This being a giant manure tank, it's not going to clean up the greatest. But I did the best I could, and that's all you can really ask for when you're doing something like this. There's going to be zero chance of me getting an arc shot of this. This is really bad. I might have to get in there with some 60-10. This is not going to weld good at all. Well, that was just an absolutely awful experience. I got this plate fully welded in now. I actually had to use some 60-10 in there just because of how dirty it was. MIG welding was not working. It was popping everywhere. I couldn't get the gun in the right position. So I just stick welded it. But now we can put the cover plate on. And I made a little cardboard template out for this. Kind of match it like so. I want to leave all the sides around to put an open corner weld on there. I feel like that gives us the best chance of this not leaking out. So that's where we started. You can see my template's not exactly perfect, but I put some notes on here to add a little bit on the ends. So we're coming into the home stretch here. All we got to do is cut this plate out, and then we're rocking and rolling. So here's my markings transferred down on here. This curve I'm just kind of eyeballing. I made some quick measurements from the cardboard template on here, just because I didn't cut the cardboard exactly right. But it'll still work out. I think this is going to be close enough to where we can, if we have a gap there, we can just fill that with weld. To help me cut these long straight sections, I'm using this tube basically just as a guide to help me go along. The bigger the thickness of the tube, the better, because that'll have a longer radius, which will help that heat get up inside. Just makes for a nicer cut. The rain started to come in out of nowhere. I gotta hurry up and get this thing done. I got the plate tacked on. You can see the fitment. It's not 100% perfect, but we're gonna be able to make this work. The next thing that I gotta fix here though is I got a big gap here, so I'm gonna weld a plate off of this and something off of here so that I can pull it together and close that up tight. Wow, it sounds absolutely gnarly out there. Okay, here we go. Let's pull this tight. Hey, that's 100 times better. Come look at that. Look at that. That's way better than before. Nice and tight. I'm going to throw a tack down there and then I can bust these two plates off. And then hopefully we can finish welding this thing out before the rain gets any worse. Though I don't see how it could get any worse. Alright, now I just got to cut these tabs off. And then we can finish welding this out. Okay. That guy's off. And now we can start welding. Well, I tried to set up a little bit of a wind block over here because it's starting to blow some of my gas away. Looking back now, I really should have just stick welded this, but... Oh, I got some stick electrodes now we're gonna finish this job up with. That wind was just too much. It was blowing all my gas around. This metal is so dirty anyways. I really should have just done this from the start, but you know, that's how you learn, right? Well guys, here she is. I got it all finished up now. Definitely not the prettiest thing you've ever seen. I am not super proud of these welds. But I did the best I could, and I learned a lot from this job moving forward. I think anything that's even remotely a little bit dirty is either going to get stick welded or maybe even dual shield, something a little bit better than MIG welding, because it just falls apart in the rust. Which is something that I really should have known. It's something that I did know, but I don't know if on this job it was just way worse or what exactly the problem was. At the end of the day, these welds are good enough to seal up this tank and you won't have to worry about any manure leaking, especially since we added that plate inside. For the guys that have been following me along for a while now, you know that I don't like to ever leave bare metal for the customer. Because then they got to figure out, well, do I coat it? Do I just wait for this thing to rust out the next time I drive it down the road? This way they get a little bit of protection on those welds, even if it's not a perfectly matched paint, even if it's not prepped 100% the right way. But my job is to make these look as good as I can, so that's what I'm gonna do. Doesn't that look just way better? It just looks a lot more finished, you know? Even if I did get a little overspray in that corner. Looks like we got a little bit of flash rust on these welds here. I'm going to knock that off with a wire wheel and then we can paint this too. And if you're wondering why that tape was there, that's why I laid that tape line out, so that you get a nice line when you go to pull that off. How do you guys handle the finish on stuff like this? Do you just leave the bare steel and then have the customer decide what to do with the paint and finish? Do you outsource that? Let me know down below what you would do if you were in my shoes. For me, the customer actually asked me to paint this, but it sounds like this guy is going to have a lot of other equipment for me to work on, so I want to make sure that this looks as good as it possibly can be. Well guys, that just about does it for this repair. If you liked it, be sure to hit the button down below that says you liked the video. And if you liked it, chances are you're going to want to subscribe to my channel because I got tons of great videos, all welding related, headed your way. Thanks for watching.